Okay, so sorry about that.
Of course, no worries. You're fine. For the consultation, just a heads up, just before we get started, I just want you to know that we do record our consultations. It's on the form and everything, as well as our lessons. So just a heads up on that before we get started. But go ahead and I saw you had you had a golden doodle, correct?
Yes.
So go ahead and just fill me in with the information that you think is important for me to know, and then your goals and all that stuff, all that good stuff, and then we can go ahead and just go from there. And then I'll be taking notes as you go along as well.
Yeah, sure. Let me know if I'm missing anything or if you want me to go into more detail. But I have a golden doodle. He's 22 pounds, male, neutered. I caught him for about a little over 2 years now. And in general, I would say 80% of the time he's really great. But as he's gotten older, I've run into more and more issues with him being like very reactive on his leash with other dogs, and particularly bigger dogs. So he'll sometimes like kind of slow down as a bigger dog is coming up, and then like I can tell he's like about to kind of charge at them, and he gets right up in their face, and like sometimes it seems like he's just excited, and sometimes it almost seems like he's gonna snap, and like he's never bit a dog or anything like that. But it doesn't happen at all when he's off leash, and it doesn't really happen with smaller dogs unless like I don't know, maybe 1 in 20 smaller dogs it'll happen to. But it's something I've tried to work on, and I just haven't had a ton of success. And I live in Lincoln Park, and it's like there are a lot of dogs there. It's a very dense neighborhood. Like I just want him to be totally good in those scenarios and not stress and like not have to worry and like cross the street or pick him up or like worry that I'm gonna try and charge at a dog when I'm not paying attention. So that is like my number one concern. But I think aside from that, I just want to have like more, I guess, confidence that I have like full control over him in different scenarios. So like I take him to Oz Park, for example, and that's one of the things that like interested me so much in your training is like it's really cool that you do it there and that like you could do it in that live setting. And most of the time he listens to me, but sometimes if he's like especially interested in another dog or in something going on, he like won't come back or he won't sit or things like that. So I just want to improve that so that like I can live with him in a dense city downtown and like feel really comfortable that I have control over him in those settings.
And then what else was it? Anything else?
I guess like the smaller thing, and I don't know if this is something that like you guys address, but he is very much a COVID puppy and he has a lot of separation anxiety. And that's also something I've struggled a lot with. So like to the extent that that's something that could be worked on or like that you have tips for, I'd be really interested in that too.
Cool. Okay. Got that. And sorry, what was your dog's name?
Charlie.
Charlie. Okay. And then is he a mini golden doodle or he's just your standard golden doodle or?
He's technically a toy, but he's like a very big toy. Um, the range is like 10 to 20 pounds. He's like 22. He's mostly poodle.
Got it. Okay. He's 2 years old, you said, right?
He's 2.5. Yeah.
Okay. And when did you start to notice this behavior from him?
Maybe like a year or so ago, but it's gotten like it goes through phases. Like it's gotten a little bit better, then it gets a little worse. When I'm away from Chicago for a while, it tends to get like worse. I live in Canada sometimes with family, and it's like a little less dense, a little fewer dogs. He's off leash more. And then I find when I go back to Chicago, it's like sometimes a little more intense. Yeah, it's kind of gradual and like sometimes it's better and sometimes it's worse, but I just want to deal with it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. The most likely the reason you're seeing when like you come back or you're moving and everything like that, why it might be more intense is because sometimes if a dog has, because dogs are very like routine based animals, So if like the routine has suddenly changed or like the environment has suddenly changed, they could be
Yeah.
stressed, which means other things could start to increase. So that's probably why you're seeing an increase in that, which makes sense. Cool. And
Yeah.
then
And then one other thing I'll add I forgot to mention is that like sometimes he'll also see a dog coming from across the street and he'll start barking like crazy and trying to get to it.
got it. Okay. And then how have you taken him to like dog parks, or does he go to doggy daycare or anything like that?
Yes, I take him to dog parks a lot. And he's like totally fine when he's off leash. And he's mostly fine on leash. It's just, especially those bigger dogs, I don't know what it is. It's like he sees like a large 80-pound dog and he's like, I must get him, which is fun. And then he also does like dog walks and sometimes in like a pack and things like that. And, like he doesn't really have issues. And I don't know, it's like certain dogs that like really set him off.
Got it. Okay. Anything else anything else I should know about, or anything else you're wanting to, like any goals you have with Charlie?
No, those are the main ones. And yeah, I have tried to socialize him a lot from an early age, bring him to a lot of dog parks, Wiggly Park, Oz Park, Lincoln Park, have lots of friends with dogs who he's played with. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And then currently on your walks with Charlie, what's the main training tool you use? So for example, is he on a martingale, prong, harness, gentulator? What's he on?
I like don't really have a great method at the moment. Like I just bring a lot of treats and I try to distract him and like get him to sit using the treats when I see another dog coming, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Got it. Okay. And then what do you use to walk him?
I use a harness and it like has the loop at the front to kind of reduce pull.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So the positive reinforcement is like the method. That's the what you're trying to do to address the reactivity. The training tool and what you're using for your walks is like what is on the dog. What's the like the physical tool. So they're kind of separate, right?
Yeah.
Because you can still have an aversive, right, prong collar, e-collar, whatever it is on the dog, but you can still use positive reinforcement with it, right? It doesn't mean you're getting rid of positive reinforcement. You can still have them together.
Yeah.
But cool. So it sounds like you've tried, to address behavior with the food stuff and everything. So the reason why I ask what's the tool you use is because a lot of times this type of behavior can sometimes stem from frustration, or maybe it's just that fear of bigger dogs. But the reason with the tool is because sometimes the tool can either have the behavior start, or it can just make the behavior worse. So in this case, the harness might make this behavior worsen because harnesses are meant for pulling. Dogs have what's called opposition reflex. Do you know what opposition reflex is?
No.
So basically, when you pull back on Charlie or maybe any other dog, but if you pull back on a dog, it makes them want to go against the pressure. They just kind of go against it. So when you pull back, they go forward, left, they go right, right, they go left. And if they want to go backwards and you're pulling them forward, they just don't want to move. So with the harness, that's what you're activating, right? Also with the harness on the chest part of the dog is can be annoying, like negative tension to them. So it's just frustrating. Harnesses again are used for pulling. So huskies have harnesses to pull the sleds. Horses have harnesses. We also use harnesses in protection training for our dogs. So how we do that is we'll have like the person across with the bite suit, gonna get bit, whatever. And then I have my dog on a harness. I pull back, but then I release a little bit of the tension. So I'm playing this like this little game of tug with the harness. So when I pull back, he feels it and wants to go forward. I let him go forward and then he gets what he wants, but then I pull him back immediately. So after a few tugs with this, and this game continues, I start to see him become aggressive. I start to see the bark happen, the frustration, because he wants to go get the bite, right? So then once I've seen what I wanted, I let the leash go, and then he gets to pull and he gets to go bite the dude or whatever, the tug, whatever it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So it's the same thing with like humans. An example we like to use is like, if you've ever seen it, or if you've seen like the movies where, these two guys are at a bar, they're both drunk, and then they're getting into like an intense argument. They start to escalate to a fight. One dude or one guy has his buddies try to hold him back, but then you start to see that guy get more intense when he's getting held back. It's the same concept there. So harnesses in Charlie's case could escalate him because it's just annoying to get held back when he's trying to either play, or maybe he's just having like this another purpose, whatever that is, right? It doesn't sound like he has any intention to bite or anything like that if he's never bitten a dog. Or maybe we just haven't seen it yet. Maybe he has some sort of a territorial behavior where he's like, this is my person, you look threatening, so I'm going to throw up a show. Hopefully you don't come over here. And then, maybe one day the dog does come to him. He's like, oh shit, like he's actually coming. He might retreat, or he might actually start to snap because he's feeling like he needs to defend himself because the dog isn't falling for the show, the bluff he's putting on. So all these things are possibilities. Another possibility is that maybe this is all coming from overstimulation. So, which is very common in dogs. An overstimulated dog is a dog who's usually doesn't really know what to do when they get outside. They're constantly smelling, searching. They're just always pulling. They're just like on go versus like, hey buddy, let's just relax on this walk. They're always in like,
that sounds a lot like him. Yeah.
So that's mostly like probably the cause for everything, because the barking, the pulling, these are all symptoms coming from something, right?
Yeah.
So to address these symptoms, you need to address the root, which is most likely overstimulation. He's just so overstimulated. He's taking out his frustration on the bigger dogs, people jumping, chewing, picking things up. He's just super overstimulated with the environment and everything like that.
He'll like stop when we see people and like ask for pets sometimes, or like try and jump on them to say hi, like not in a mean way, in a friendly way, but he's like, we always say he's like very ADD.
Yes. Yeah, that's another thing we'll hear as owners will say that, and like, yeah, he's probably just overstimulated. But a lot of these things we technically won't know for sure. Once we start the training, once we start to address the overstimulation, then we can see, oh, he stopped barking. Okay, he was just overstimulated. Or maybe we still see hesitation with the bigger dogs. Then we can see, okay, he's more like, maybe he's just fearful of the bigger dogs. And now, you know what I mean? So a lot of this is kind of playing a big ear, but most of this just sounds like overstimulation, because at the end of the day, he can be at a dog park. He can socialize. He's great. He's fine. So that's what I think. Any questions about what I've just said?
No. And with regards to the territorial, that's definitely possible. But I guess one thing I've noticed at home is like Will live sometimes with my stepsister's dog, and he'll let other dogs eat his food, even like stranger dogs, and like he doesn't freak out, and he lets other dogs use his toys, and like he doesn't really get that upset, which is like totally different than family dogs I've had. I don't know if that's a helpful observation. I guess some of it we'll just see as we start training, but I always thought that was interesting.
Yeah, you can have a dog who's not, because what you're explaining there is resource guarding, right? This is what you don't touch this, right? You can have a dog who is not a resource guarder but will protect the home. You can have a dog who is confident in dog socialization and a lot of stuff, but when the dog is in a crowded area with many people, they're insecure. They're not there. They're not that confident. You can also have a dog who's environmentally very confident, but then is a resource guarder and territorial and all this stuff, right? So for the resource guarding, that's technically won't connect, but like you said, we'll just see like, what it comes down to. Territorial behavior is more natural. Resource guarding is natural. All these behaviors are natural to dogs. It just doesn't really translate that well to the human world, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of things like, if the dog picks up a tissue and we need to get the tissue, if the dog's trying to guard it, like, okay, I understand you're a dog, that's what you do, but we can't have this happen because
Yeah.
it's something you're not supposed to eat that could possibly cause a vet visit and all that stuff, right? But that's good to know. Any other questions or anything else?
No, that's it.
Cool. What else? So there are other tools out there you might have seen, like gentle leaders. Are you familiar with a gentle leader?
Is that like a slip collar? Or is that different?
It's a leash that goes around the muzzle of the dog, and then the strap goes behind the neck. So it's just like it looks like this. It's not a muzzle, but it's just like a little strap. So basically, when the dog pulls or you need to pull up, that has to go like this with the leash. So that's a gentle leader. Gentle leaders, we use those tools for puppies who are under 6 months, just to avoid trachea damage and the pulling. And obviously, we don't use harness because of the side effects in the future and what it could cause. We have prong collars. Do you know what a prong collar is?
Yeah, we used one with my family dog.
Cool. Yeah. So you're familiar with it. As you know, it's spiky. It's supposed to mimic a dog's mouth. Prong collars are physical. It's a physicality. So a lot of times when owners say, like, I put a prong collar on my dog and my dog was like totally different once they felt the tension or the feeling of a prong collar, that's because it's their language. That's how dogs communicate to each other. So if Charlie's at a dog park and this big dog approaches him and he's like, hey dude, I don't like this, and the dog is just kind of like, oh, I want to play, whatever, they're goofy, and they keep pressing and pressing, and then Charlie's like, I can't have you in my space. How do you think Charlie would have to address this bigger dog?
Like if he had the collar, or if he didn't have the collar.
Just off leash in the dog park. This bigger dog pestering him, and Charlie feels very like uncomfortable. How do you think Charlie would have to get this bigger dog to leave him alone?
Like in reality, when that happens, he'll usually like bare his teeth and then start barking, or like kind of try to make himself bigger or more in his face.
Exactly. Yeah. And then in some situations, sometimes, yeah, it does happen where the dog sees this happening and they're just really aloof, really happy-go-lucky, and just like, oh, what's going on? They'll keep going.
Yeah.
Where then Charlie would have to probably escalate to a bite, right? Because the dog isn't reading the signals correctly. So what I'm trying to say is that dogs bite each other, right?
Yeah.
Dogs can't use English or words or vocab or language because, I mean, obviously they just don't talk, but they can't say like off, leave it, no, or, sit, and then here's your reward, or they don't put each other in timeouts. It's, you're going to do this to me and you're going to be this way coming in my space like that. I'm gonna have to address you with a quick bite. And, they've been getting that physicality since they've been just a few weeks old. There's a really popular YouTube video, you might have seen it, but we like to show our clients this. It's a cream retriever mother. She's entering a little playpen with her litter, and they all start to like run up on her. They're whining. They're very excited to see her. And then she stops, she shows her teeth, she starts to growl, and she snaps at 3 puppies. And like the other 7 like turn around and then they just lay down, just quiet. Right. So just from that young age, the mother is already laying down the law, boundaries, rules. When I'm here, you don't give me this energy. We're supposed to be calm all the time in this house, right? So prong collar, that's where they get the psychology from, is that it's physical, it's meant to mimic a dog bite. So then they understand there's consequence to their actions now. A lot of times though, the reason why we don't have programs for prong collars is because sometimes we hear a lot where clients will do a consultation. They'll say, yeah, we tried prong collar. It was great for first few weeks, but then it just stopped working. Or yeah, we tried prong collar, but the dog didn't care. Like the dog just still choked themselves, like didn't care. So we already know like the success rate, I think is it's a hit or miss. It's pretty low. It's, you can still teach heel, stay, sit down, calm, place. with the prong collar. But then another con would be like once you take that leash off, you've lost control. There's no more connection now. So that's why we don't do it. It's also very more nuanced. It's a lot of physicality. It's a lot of yanking or pulling and tugging and all that stuff. So a lot of times owners aren't able to properly communicate to the dog with the prong collar. So that's why we don't really do it. Which then brings us to e-collar. You're aware that we train e-collars, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. Have you ever used one with your past dogs?
No.
Have you done any research?
Yeah, I have.
A lot of times you might have seen like they call them shock collars. We don't call them shock collars. We try to avoid that just because it sounds like very negative about the tool. E-collar, remote collar, whatever you want to call it, right? Shocking, we don't use that. I mean, yeah, it is electric, but it's not electricity. So it's not like blowing through the dog's body. If you've seen one, it's just you have the collar, you have a little box, and there's 2 contact points there. Whatever those 2 contact points are touching is what it'll be contracting or affecting. Have you ever been to a physical therapist or a chiropractor?
Yes.
Have
But
you
I
ever had?
haven't used anything like electric.
Oh, I see. So they have a machine. It's called like a TENS unit. So all they do is they put on the muscle, and then it just contracts the muscle to work on like torn tissue, I believe. So that same technology that's used on humans is what's used on the e-collars. It's just a mini TENS unit basically on a collar. So we've had physical therapists as clients, and as soon as we explain that, they're just like they're immediately like relieved, like, oh, that's what it is. Okay, I'm fine. We can go ahead. And or they'll feel it and they're just like, yeah, this is just a muscle contractor. That's all it does.
Yeah, I did a lot of research before, so I'm not, I guess, not too concerned.
Sweet. So the brand we use is called Dogtra. This brand has been used by Jesse for more than half his career. He's tried other brands before, but Dogtra has gotten him the best results, and the dogs perform a lot better on this brand than other brands. If you've done research on like specific brands and collars, you might see something where it's like 8 levels of stimulation, 10 levels of stimulation, 90, whatever, right? Our brand Dogtra has 127 levels of stimulation in increments of 1. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 127. So don't think that when you see those 8 leveled e-collars that we have 100 more levels. Their maximum power of 8 and our maximum of 127 are the same. But we have so many more numbers to be more specific to the dog's personality, the breed, the context we're in. Because as you can imagine, if you have only 8 levels, those jumps are pretty big, right? So if 5 is making Charlie yelp, it's too much power. But then 4, he doesn't care, he doesn't feel it, then you're stuck. Versus the Dogtra, you can be very specific. Dogtra's collars are waterproof. You get a mile to a half-mile long range. They're rechargeable. You don't need batteries. Very simple, straightforward to use. And it's also the way that stim is delivered as well. So some brands have a sharper stimulation to the dog. Some brands have there are some brands actually out there who are still like that feel like an electrocution. But our brand Dogtra, it's very dull. So the dogs aren't super freaked out when they're feeling it. So that's why we also like the Dogtra brand. Any questions about the e-collar system or anything like that itself?
No.
And there's also models within the brand to go with the size of the dogs as well. So Charlie's not going to be walking around with a big old box and it's like for Saint Bernards or Great Danes. There are certain models that are would fit according to the breed, the behavior we're trying to address, and then the size of the dog.
Got it.
So other than that, that's all about the e-collar. Now,
Actually, I guess one question I do have is, like, let's say you're at a place where you've mostly addressed like the behavioral issues, or let's say you fully address them. Like, do most of the dogs that you train continue wearing those collars like throughout the rest of their life, or is it really just while you're addressing the behavior?
that's a good question. So It's not so much that, how to say, so on your walks, right?
Mhm.
Um, even after you complete the program, you would still have your e-collar on. Now, the goal is to not always use it. The goal is
Got
to
it.
have it there in case of an emergency. So, for example, let's say we're walking on a busy street and a car accident happens, a car backfires, a firework goes off, but it's not even 4th of July yet, or something suddenly happens where Charlie is like, I'm out of here. I need to get away. We've heard a lot of horror stories where owners get pulled to the ground, leashes slip out, collars break, collar slips out, whatever, and the dog is running away. So in
Mhm.
that sense, or in that scenario, Charlie is in what's called flight mode. And when dogs are in flight mode, they're thinking kill or be killed. They're running for their life. So sometimes Charlie come, right, might not work. So then you have your remote to override the flight mode and make him do the 180 and come back to you, right? So in just those situations, like emergencies, is what we want to kind of plan for,
Got
because
it.
every walk is we can't predict what's going to happen with
Yeah.
these dogs, right? So like for my dogs, Jesse's dogs, or other trainers' dogs here, is that you'll find that, or we'll find that we tap the button maybe like 3 times, 4 times a month, maybe like here
Yeah.
and there. But again, the goal is to obviously get away from using it all the time. Because if by like, a few months after your program and you're still tapping constantly, then there's something that isn't being practiced correctly, or there's something that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
In the home, if Charlie's an angel, he's not giving you any problems, it's evening, whatever, you don't need the e-collar. If you're gonna
Yeah.
have guests come over, and let's say Charlie's very jumpy, overly excited, you can collar him off 30 minutes prior, address whatever that is needing to be addressed. And if you find that he's settled, he's great after that, just that beginning moment, you can take the collar off, or you can keep it on just in case. However you want to go about that, that's up to you. But in short, the e-collar is only on when you need it. Does that make
Got
sense?
it. Yeah, totally.
Um, so what we would need to do first for Charlie with the e-collar and how it would help with the issues he's having is we're going to first teach him what's called the heel exercise, right? Our heel exercise is our walking command technically. So our version of heel is very strict. Our version of heel means walk with me, stay with me, and then sit when I stop. So when you take 5 steps with Charlie, Charlie takes 5 steps. If you take 10, he takes 10. And then when you come to a stop, he is to automatically sit with no words, with his shoulder parallel to your leg, loose leash in any environment. I don't care what's going on, I don't care how many dogs are around. That's how strict it needs to be. So we're teaching that class 1, or as an introduction to the e-collar for a few reasons. Main reason would be, the leash walking and then the reactivity. But I'll talk about that in a bit. But the first reason is having him understand what the e-collar is, and then also it eventually goes away, right? Because if we can, a common thought process people have about e-collar training is that dog doesn't sit, or dog does bad behavior, you max out the e-collar, you slam him with it. That's incorrect. The dog first needs to know how it works, how it turns on, how it turns off. And this exercise helps them figure that out. Charlie will never know where the stimulation or this feeling is coming from. So for what I mean by that is Charlie won't look at you and think like, why are you shocking me, right? He doesn't know, because there's nothing physically connects to the feeling and you, right? Even though you have the remote, there's nothing still connected there. So dogs tend to think it's the universe. I had a client say big brother speaking to them, whatever you want to call it, right? But we're teaching him that, hey buddy, you're the one in control of it. When you do this, it turns on, but when you do this, it turns off. So once he figures out how it works, then you can dive into behavioral stuff like barking out the window or barking at dogs or whatever, right? So again, teaching him the understanding of the e-collar. Again, and then obviously we're also addressing the leash walking skills, and then your reactivity is also being addressed. So it's not so much of the obedience we're focused on, even though it is a plus, it's great to have that structured walk and everything, but it's the idea and the psychology behind the heel. That's what matters, right? Because if your heel is good, we're using e-collar, and we're at a certain level on the collar where it's concerning enough to Charlie where he has to listen, right? Technically, he shouldn't worry about anything else, because he should be more worried about and concerned about keeping his shoulder on your hip always. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So how it usually goes is basically we teach the dog heel. What does it fix? Maybe we notice that let's say that a dog has reactivity with everything. So if there's any, well, I'll kind of explain like the spectrum of like the progression is if there's any human reactivity and you like, I want to go say hi to humans or just barking at humans, sometimes it just, most of the time, it just automatically goes away. Like we don't even need to do anything to address human stuff. It just goes away when we teach the heel command. How the next thing that goes away, it's usually calm dogs, rollerbladers, scooters, bikers, joggers, and other reactive dogs. And then the last thing that you can't really predict is you turn the corner, there's a dog there, right? That's kind of how it progresses. So it's almost like, humans, they're not really an issue. Calm objects, now it's the fast moving objects and reactive dogs, and then it's the one you can't predict where you turn the corner, there's a dog there. So that's kind of how progress works. So let's say we teach you heel and you're like, he's great. Big dogs aren't an issue, but when the other big dog reacts to him, he becomes reactive. And then I'm stuck here. Then we can create like a controlled context, kind of addressing that by itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. So that's what we need to do first. And then a lot of times, and then the overstimulation. So this addresses the overstimulation because an overstimulated dog is looking for something to do, right? They don't know what to do on these walks. They're constantly just go, 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 go. With the e-collar and the heel command, you're giving them a job to do, right? It's mentally draining for Charlie to keep his shoulder on your leg for 30 minutes, right? The whole time. So then in result of that, you're going to get a more calmer dog, right? Because another sign or symptom clients would tell me about an overstimulated dog would be, I take my dog for a like crazy amount of walks. I do fetch, I do tremel, I do all these things, but then my dog still wants to do more when I want to just rest.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sign of an overstimulated dog is because physically, yes, your dog is getting that exercise, but mentally, nothing's really affecting that brain there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. So what else? And then the separation anxiety. Like what does he do when you leave?
He like howls and cries for like he will not stop.
Okay. Is he still being kenneled at home or does he have free roam?
He is free roam.
Does he tear anything up or he's just vocal?
No, he's like never had an accident while home alone. He's never damaged anything. He just like sits there and he cries and then he's like hysterical when I get home. And I've tried a few things like, doing it and leaving him in increments and like, changing up my routine or like, holding my keys and not actually leaving and then like ignoring him when I'm leaving and coming back. But it hasn't helped a ton. And then it's also just been challenging because like I live in an apartment and I have neighbors. So like there's only, so much I can try before I piss someone off.
Got it. Okay. So what I would do for now is, do you work from home?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. What we tell our COVID clients is that, during COVID, I'm calling those clients COVID clients because they were during COVID. When they got puppies, we would tell them, hey, what does life look like if you weren't working from home? Oh, I would be in the office 9 to 5. Okay. From 9 to 5, your puppy is to be kenneled in another room while you're working from home. So same thing here. Not really saying do 9 to 5, but what you can start doing is maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, he's kenneled in another room while you're doing your thing. With the e-collar, if he starts to howl, these are things you can technically address, because think of the e-collar as like a dog bite, right? So you're just kind of biting him in a non-confrontational way, right? E-collar, another wonderful thing about e-collar is that since he doesn't know where it's coming from, there's no confrontation, there's no emotion, there's no yelling. It's just, you're just pressing a button. So this eliminates a lot of effort, right? So if you're working from home, you're in a Zoom meeting and you hear him in the other room howling, you can correct it without even going or leaving your desk. So now he's learning how to almost, what's the word, self-regulate, right? Because sometimes, you know, what's the word? How to explain this? If you're the only way to keep him quiet, like sometimes clients would say, if I'm there with him, he's quiet. But now we can eliminate that. Now you don't even need to be with him and you can still address the problem. So what will happen is we'll teach him heel. Let's see how this style of structure and discipline on your walks affects everything else, his life, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you start to notice he's more calm when you're leaving because he's more relaxed because he's getting that discipline and structure. Or maybe, Enrique, this is still an issue. He's great on the walks. He's perfect. I love him. But when I leave, he's still having his issues. Then we can go ahead and dive into more details and stuff like that. But for now, what you can try doing, just having more separation when you're home. Because technically, it should be harder for a dog to be separated from you when you're home than when you leave. Because he's thinking, you're home, like we should be interacting, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And well, what's kind of weird is that like a lot of the time when I'm home, like he'll be in a totally different room and he's fine. But it's when I leave that he kind of loses it.
Yeah. It could be also the reason is, has he, actually one sec. I'm gonna have to go get my charger real quick for the laptop. Sure. I'll be right back. Okay. Well, what was I saying? Oh, you were saying he's able to separate himself from you while you're still home, right? You said that?
Yeah, like he'll often stay in a different room than me while I'm working. And like we do a big walk in the morning and then he just sleeps all day in a separate room and I work. But if he notices I leave, then that's when it kind of starts.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. It could be because he still has the option to go and see you. So what I would do is, has he had any experiences in the kennel before or in a dog kennel before, or crate?
He has, but it didn't go super well. So I got him kind of a week before everything shut down. So I was treating him as if I was going to go into the office and he was going to get, 2 walks a day from someone else while I was gone. But he would be howling in the crate no matter what I did, if it was a Kong or whatever. And I got complaints from my neighbors. And then during COVID, I moved back home with my family. And when I put him in at night, if he heard anyone walking in the house, he would wake up again and start howling. And it just like wasn't practical because I was living in a house with a lot of other people. They were all very upset with me. So we just like stopped the kennel. I really wanted to be able to crate him. It just like in practice wasn't working out because like at home, everyone was mad at me. In my apartment building, I was getting like complaints from everyone and was like in trouble with the HOA. So it was like not a great situation.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So for now, if he's not howling when you're home and that works, just keep doing that for now. Because if I tell you to practice this, then you don't have like a tool or any more knowledge to address his howling at the moment. So I'd say, yeah, just do what you're doing now. And then when you leave from home, if he's howling, see if you can find a spot where you can kennel him away from your neighbors. Put a blanket over him so it's like muffled, maybe,
Yeah.
or like in an area. That's what I would do for now. But yeah, we can definitely get into more of that like once we start the training and everything like that.
Okay, that
Any
sounds
other
good.
questions?
I guess I know there were like a number of different lengths of packages, and I'm curious how you deal with that. Like, do you assess right away, or is it like you start with 6 and then if you need 9, then you do 9?
Yeah. So are you interested in recall, the come command?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other commands you're interested in besides the stuff you've talked about, which is like the walks and everything, besides recall? Is there anything else you're interested in, like place, or do you want to eventually bring him to like patios, like outdoor patios, and have him lay down and not move for like an hour or 2 hours? Or is your goal to have him completely off leash trained because maybe you go on hikes every other weekend and you want that most control? Or is your priority just, I just want more control because it's also depending how life looks. So if your life is like, I walk my dog around the block, I want him to run around, I call him and I go home and that's it, then that's kind of telling me you need this program. Or maybe if you want everything, then that's another program. So with Charlie, like, how does your life look, or how do you want your life to look with Charlie?
Yeah, I like bring him to a lot of different settings. I bring him actually to patios a lot, and he usually, when we get there, just lays down by the table and like sleeps the whole time. And I also, my office is dog friendly, so when it opens back up, I'll likely also be bringing him to the office.
Okay.
So definitely like wanting to be, and I've brought him to the office before, and he just like sleeps under my desk all the time. So definitely like want to have that control, but I haven't run into very many issues in that setting.
Okay. Yeah. So then what I'm thinking is all you're gonna probably need is like, it's a 6-week program, nothing more,
Okay.
because you've already had successes with these scenarios and these environments. So there's really no need to go over this because he's fine in it, right? So I think the 6-week would be great because this is in person, by the way. That's what you're interested in, or you want to know
Yeah,
about?
no, I definitely want it in person.
Okay. It'd be 2 classes. Those 2 first classes are going to be heal, right? First class, teach you the heal command, and then you practice that. So we do one topic at a time. The second class, how did everything go? And then we teach the second part of heal and maybe go over a few things that you were having issues with or whatever it is. Third class depends how everything else is going, where we can start recall that class, or maybe there's still something that's not being making any progress. We can cover that. 2 classes are usually taken. 2 classes are usually needed for the recall command. So that's already 4 classes kind of there. And then 5, again, just depending on what you want to work on. And then the 6 could be like if you want to cover something in the home, or maybe you want to do an extra command. However you want to use that last class is kind of like up to you. But if you're just looking, the walks, the reactivity, and recall and the separation anxiety, 6-week program would be enough for you. Let's say you're seeing great progress and you're very happy and you're like, I want to learn everything now, and you want to just train more, then you're more than welcome to buy like a 3-week program, right? And then just have 3 extra classes, or you can buy another week, whatever you want to do and however you want to use that. You can always add more classes. But I think the 6-week program would be very good for you, just so that it's also giving us wiggle room to see how things are going on inside the home. Because if we did the 3-week program, it would work, but then we wouldn't have time to get the full recall in. So I think the 6-week would be good. 9-week and 12-week are there if you're wanting more control. But it sounds like he's already good in different environments. This sounds like this is the main priority, or this is the main issue for you and Charlie.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, as long, I wasn't sure if there was the option or like what it looked like to increase. So as long as there's the option, if I'm like this, I need more, or I want to cover different scenarios, I think 6 weeks sounds good.
Cool. Again, It's one topic. So how it works is it's a class once a week for an hour.
Okay,
So I will meet you, for example, it'll be Mondays, 1 p.m., 6 times for an hour.
got it.
On the calendar, you get 7 slots. That 7th slot is there in case life happens. If you need to cancel or if there's an emergency, you still have a slot reserved for you, and we can just continue off where we left off. Now, once you use that extra slot, you'll have to wait to kind of get back on the calendar. It's just to keep everything flowing, so we're not. So just because we're getting a lot of clients now, because it's the summertime, everyone wants to train outside. So it's just to keep everything flowing. So this is a heads up on that. For your collar, my assistant Tina, she's going to send you a follow-up email after this consultation. In the follow-up email, she's going to send you the programs we talked about with the prices, the color I recommend for Charlie, and a link to a form that needs to be signed and agreed to. Once that form is signed and agreed to, we can go ahead and begin the billing and booking process. We work with your availability. So Tina's going to ask, when are you available? And then you'll give her your dates and all that stuff, and then we work with that. For using, what is it? To get away from the harness, just purchase like a regular flat buckle collar. So don't use those snap ones. Don't buy a collar that snaps, because in our experiences, those break all the time. So the ones that they're like a belt, you put it.
I have one for him. He wears like both a collar and a harness right now.
Nice. So we would use that, and then your standard 6-foot leash is perfect. What else? Any other questions about the programs, the training, e-collar, or Charlie, or anything like that?
How far out are you booking at the moment?
I'm not sure. I'm not too aware of my schedule or calendar. That's kind of that's Tina can give you that information.
Okay.
But yeah, she'll tell you when you can get started and everything like that. But definitely want to, the faster you sign the agreement and all this stuff, the faster we can train. Like I said, we're going to start to get busy with the nice weather coming along. Any other questions?
Maybe this is a Tina question, but I travel somewhat frequently, and so I'm just curious. I know you have that 7th, like, for wiggle room, but I guess depending on when you started, if it's like, hey, I'm going to be out of town these 2 weeks, is it possible to like do 3 lessons, like pause 2 weeks, do 3 lessons? Or
yeah, that works. Yeah, as long as you tell Tina when these things are going to happen, she'll definitely work with that. So that shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be an issue for the training as well. So that Charlie would be fine with that gap there, if there's a gap. Any other questions?
Last one, and maybe this is a weird one to ask, but I know that you have a daycare facility in Logan Square, but I'm curious if you like have any recommendations in Lincoln Park.
Lincoln Park.
Just because Logan is a little bit far.
Is Found? Do you know Found? I'm not sure where that's located, but I know Found is the only really other daycare we find that is similar to our structure wise, and that's the only one I could think of. But I'm not sure where they're located. But
no worries.
Yeah. Sorry.
I just said no worries. I was just curious. I haven't taken him to daycare because I have not found one that I like, trust, or like yet. But I'm always curious.
Yeah. And then I think I'm not going to make any promises, but I'm pretty sure if you are a training client and you choose specific and consistent days to have him come to our daycare, you can get free transportation.
Oh, okay. That's really good to know.
Yeah. So just a heads up. Now, if you want to find out more information about that, go ahead and email the info email.
Okay.
You would just say, hey, I just had a consultation with Enrique, was talking about daycare, was wondering, if, I can get set up, or how would transportation work for a training client. And she'll let you know. I'm pretty sure it's still the same. I'm not really too familiar with like that information there. She'll let you know. Elizabeth is her name.
Okay.
She'll be late. So she'll be the woman you're talking to in the email. What else? Any other questions?
That is all. Thank you so much. This has been very helpful.
Of course. If anything else comes up, another question you think of, feel free to email me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you're interested in like how a class looks, first class, you can always go to our YouTube channel. We'll post all our first lessons on
I watched
there.
one.
Cool, nice. So you already did that. Cool. But yeah, just keep a lookout for Tina's follow-up email and then we'll be in touch.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Have a good weekend or
You
good
too.
week. Sorry. Good week.
Sounds good. You too. Bye.